Good morning, Michael. You were really pushing it this morning.
Yeah, I like to make sure you stay right on the line.
You do. You just love to see my blood pressure go up. Wasn't it you who said you wanted to hook me up to a blood pressure machine?
Yeah, we need a little pulse meter over here on the side.
Oh, goodness. Well, you sound like, did you just not wake up well, or what happened there?
No, I've been working all morning.
You have a job?
Yeah.
Other than this, really?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you texted because I didn't realize it was already 9 o'clock.
Well, see, that's what I'm here for, is just to keep you honest. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I've been still troubled about the what you told us the last time.
Oh, yeah.
About the guys that Trump was considering for the Fed.
Yeah. Well, don't forget, when Obama was in, you never really heard of the guy until Obama was in, but all you heard was Timothy Geithner. Remember Timothy Geithner all the time?
No.
He was Obama's pick, and that guy was such bad news, such a bad guy. But ultimately, I think there's a disconnection because people think like the president can do something about the economy and all this stuff. They have nothing to do with any of that. Yeah, they can go over and make trade deals and things like that. But these guys are who run the monetary policy, period.
Right.
And if you have bad guys like that, it doesn't matter who's in office. It's the same people it's like I almost think of it like that's the generational bureaucracy that actually runs the government. It's these people that have been in these positions for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, in and out on both sides of the fence, on the government,
swamp creatures,
side, in the agencies. Yeah. This is, I hope that none of those guys actually get in there. I hope it was just Trump for some reason saying, this is who we're thinking about, just to kind of appease the Wall Street bank, big bank people.
Well, now, he does do that. And that he's done that. He did that very well while he was president,
Yeah.
Well, let's not get bogged down in that. So this morning we have a recorded conversation. We had to do that on Tuesday because our guests work for a living. It can't just take the morning off to actually have a conversation with us. But because this is such an important topic issue, I'm not really sure what I want to say, but I've mentioned this before and I'm going to mention it again. I take a magazine. My family is Irish. We can trace our history back to Ireland. And so I take an Irish online magazine, and this morning there were 3 articles in that about immigration and the horrible trouble that they're having in Ireland with unchecked immigration. And my sister just went to England and France, and she was actually texting me while she was there. I'm meeting few Londoners. I mean, they're just, it's just, she said it was just both of the cities, parents and London, were just overrun with immigrants. And there's nothing wrong with legal immigration.
No.
I have 2 children that were legally immigrated here. So for anybody to say that it's, my views on immigration have anything to do, I'm a racist or, colonialist or whatever the left likes to use now to throw out, to keep us quiet. I'm none of those things. But when you have unchecked immigration, then bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
And I want to, before we start the video, I wanted to share the screen and show, because I haven't done this before, and I just think it's super important that we talk about this. So this is what?
Think about this, Jenny, on the unchecked immigration. Just look at my own personal experience and what I know with the town of Guyman, where that it's a completely different place than it was in 1990, in 2000, completely different. And the only thing that's changed is the amount is the people that have come into that community.
Yeah.
And that's not one isolated place. That's, a lot of small town America across the board have experienced that same thing.
Well, and I have to say, both of us were shocked by some of the things that Cam and Jessica had to say. And so we'll put on the video in a second, because it's super important that everybody sees it. But I want to go over, this was the work permits visa task force that our governor asked for. This was the recommendations. And I really want you to be able to see this. I'm going to see if I can make it larger on the screen. The task force recommends creating an Office of New Oklahomans to promote interagency coordination and collaboration on issues impacting non-citizens in state and federal government. So what's the first thing that pops into your head?
Well, multiple things.
Well, I mean, but let's just talk about it. Governor Stitt says he's a Republican.
Non-citizen.
I think it's the first or second on the Republican platform is that we don't enlarge government. That because we're called conservatives because we want to conserve the size of the government. We don't want to enlarge it. So the very first thing that our governor's task force suggests is let's enlarge the government and put people in. And as Stephanie just said a second ago, and these would be all unelected persons. I mean, that they would be. So I object. I mean, number one recommendation, I object completely, right? I assume you do as well.
Yes.
All right. So now let's go down to number 2. The task force recommends empowering employers, internationally trained talent, and migrant workers with the tools and information necessary to fill high-need sector jobs. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and say this, but it will be nice. I kind of wish, Cam and Jessica could say it for you, like they said it for Michael and I the other day. Please note, and help me say it right, H-1B, because I say it wrong. Right. So H-1B visas are visas that are given to people who come to this country who are non-citizens who work in a job. People don't understand your employer has to sponsor that. Okay. You can't just come over here and go, well, I think now I'm going to go to work for somebody. It doesn't work that way. An H-1B means that you're working here because your employer has sponsored you to be here. And that's positions in higher ed. That's positions in lower ed. We have a whole bunch of people at Dove Charter School, as we heard about the other day from another one of our guests, Dr. Pelham, that are on H-1B visas, and they're brought over to teach because we don't have enough, we don't need Oklahoma teachers or American teachers or whatever we might, So, and there are businesses that do that. I know of many businesses who do that. So I cry crap on that. So the task force recommends empowering employers internationally trained. Well, if that's the case, the employers know how to do that. Employers know how to do that. It's not that hard, apparently, to get people over here on H-1B visas. So then it comes down here, and the next one is the task force recommends promoting policies which optimize efficiency for international talent navigating credentialing processes.
If I can make one comment real quick,
please,
because I mentioned this twice. International talent. Yes, there are people here, H-1Bs, that are in higher education or whatever these higher level, where you've got highly qualified, highly educated, foreign people that come here to teach or do whatever. I'm not taking anything away from that. Most 99% of the H-1Bs that I've seen, Jenny, are at the lowest possible level, just grunt work people in places. So to say that it's international talent is a complete fallacy, in my opinion.
Crap? You mean more crap?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the next one is this task force recommends piloting innovative. Anytime they use the word innovative, it means you're going to get screwed. Innovative and screwing taxpayers, synonymous in the Urban Dictionary. Just go look it up. Piloting innovative solutions to increase work permits and visas issued to non-citizens seeking to move and or living in Oklahoma. Okay. I don't know how, again, it simply makes no sense. None of this makes any sense when you think about what's going on here. I think they had one more? Yes. Last one. The task force, this is my favorite. Let's read it together, shall we? Just so that we get it out there. The task force
recommends issuing driving
privilege cards to qualifying non-citizens
to address
public safety concerns.
Yeah, there you go.
So can anybody out there, got a nice audience this morning, anybody out there want to cry crap on that one too? So now that we've seen these recommendations, I actually am kind of glad we did this because, good morning, Amber. Thank you for being with us. I'm kind of glad we did this now, aren't you, really? Because then now I think what Cam and Jessica say, I think will make even more sense, knowing what the task force recommendations were and going back to those. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad we did that then on the end. And I think I would also draw your attention before we go on to.
Well, I want to say, Jenny, what's wrong with, why don't we just raise our own kids above 50% proficiency so they can be the productive people in our society? But why don't we get them from like 20, 30%, 40%? Why don't we at least try to get them to 50%? Is that
wow.
50?
Well, I don't know about that, Michael. I'm not sure that that's really a good plan, because then those kids might grow up and decide that they can see for themselves what crap our government is putting on us. And I don't know that that would be a good thing. Would it be? I just want to draw your attention to an article that is up on the blog. I do wish you would go look at it and read it. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt signs illegal immigration bill only to open door to visa task force. There's a lot of information in this that is, you can see the red stuff is where I've actually linked things. And I think if you were to go and read this, I think it would be super helpful to kind of put that into context about what we're talking about right now. But you want to go ahead and we'll bring in the video. We'll start the video.
I do want to make a comment.
Let's hold on one second. Okay, go ahead.
I do want to make a comment about the video. Just what I took away. I mean, here you've got Cam and Jessica, who are literally like at the grassroots level of the information that this task force wants to know, wants to put in place for whatever. And in my opinion, it's almost like they're just being completely like for namesake only. Hey, here's this committee of these people, but we don't pay attention to them. We don't utilize them. We're not, we're going to do our own thing. That's almost like what I took away was, they have these resources in these people here that really know and have the actual connections of what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, but they're completely not even, I wouldn't even say underutilized. I'd say they're not even utilized in any capacity whatsoever.
No, and Cam and Jessica will talk about that during our interview, but I did forget to do one thing, which I should have done. We need to see who is on this task force. Let me see if I can pull this back up really quickly.
Yeah.
Because I forgot about that. That is super important. Because we should see that before we see. All right, so let's go down and look at who's actually on the task force. Secretary of Public Safety, Consul of Mexico in Oklahoma City, an appointee of the governor, the designate of the pro tem. These are many of these names are names that are Hispanic in nature. Designee of the chancellor of the Oklahoma State System of Higher Education, executive director of the Oklahoma State Employee Systems, Brett Farley and he said it says designate of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, but we know that he's with the Catholic Archdiocese here. Lieutenant Colonel designee of the Commissioner of the Safety Department, District Attorney's Council, Director of the Oklahoma Tax Commission. So I think it's important to know who's on that, but I definitely think it's important to know that the Consul of Mexico in Oklahoma City is on the task force. So we are here with our guests, Cam and Jessica Perez. And I say Cam because his name is, you don't even put your name on there, Cam.
Yeah. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Camilo Ulloa, and I go by Cam because it's a lot easier than saying Cam than Camilo Ulloa.
Now, Cam, where were you born in Oklahoma?
No, ma'am. I was born in Bogota, Colombia.
Okay, all right, Colombia, because I could not remember. And then you immigrated when you were young, though, right?
Yeah, I was 7 years old when I came to the country. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Jessica, were you born in Oklahoma?
No, I was born in Arizona.
Oh, okay. Well, Arizona. Now, is your family from a Hispanic country, or what's your origin?
We are from Arizona. We're native Tucsonans.
Okay.
And so my father is still back in Arizona. But my mom was adopted. So she was adopted from some region in Mexico. So in that regard, I'd be like first generation from her, although she was adopted into an American family. So my mother was American.
Okay. Well, and both of you are, I'll just say it right out. Both of you are Republicans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Voting.
Voting. So, well, after the governor's task force on visas and work permits came out, and I wrote something, well, I wrote two things about it actually. And then the recommendations came out, and I was pretty critical about that. And Cam, you reached out to me after that, and we were talking a little bit about that. Can you kind of ramp up just a little bit on what were your feelings as a person who has actually moved here? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, initially, I wish we had those kind of policies when I first moved in, because it would have made life a lot easier immigrating to this country, you know. But I will
So are
say,
you saying it wasn't simple?
no.
Well,
No,
it's funny because I've talked about this before, but we have two adopted daughters, right, from Africa, and what we went through to bring them over and get them citizenship. Lots of money involved, almost a year with the visas and all the stuff just through adoption. So for people who either have brought people over legally or went through the process legally, for me, it just personally it hacks me off to no end to think that we're going to try to make it easier for people who aren't really following the system to follow the system if they weren't. I don't know. It just it
Right.
annoys me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
essentially what you said, it comes from a lot of resources, not just monetarily. You're talking about, forms, you're talking about status, you're talking about history. In a social aspect, it's so taxing that it becomes very difficult. I'm not just speaking this for myself, but I bet individuals who are out there are going, what happened? Why are we not really getting, I don't want to say like the benefits, but getting people really
well, so can I maybe interpret and say, why did I have to go through all of that and you guys don't have to?
no, go for it.
I mean, isn't that fair enough to say? I mean, how come I had to go through the whole system and do all of that and you guys don't have to do that? I mean, there's a vetting process that goes on with people who come to this country as foreigners, and there's a reason for that. And we just haven't had that with the Biden administration, right?
No. So one of the background. So last time there was any immigration reform was 1986, right? When we're talking about big reform, and even to this day, I ask people like, "Hey, what you think when that happened during that time when Reagan was around?" They said it was a disaster, but 30 years later, they could see more of an improvement. But what's going on right now? They're saying this is not what we were expecting. What happened when the first immigration reform happened, right? So previous to that, everybody says, well, there was DACA, right? DACA that only affected like 6% of all immigrants, which are children or people who are going through school. Very small, minute. Which if you're gonna really help a community, help the community. Don't just do a little tiny percentage and say, hey, good job. We did an awesome and amazing job for all these people. So anyways.
Ooh. Sorry, I had my mic muted there because we had dog noise going on at my house. So when you say it improved, the 1986 situation improved with immigration, in terms of what? It made it easier, less stressful. We managed to know kind of who was coming in and who was coming out.
Policy wise, yes. So there was creation of policy, a process, instead of just going, by the Statue of Liberty and saying, hey, you're an American now. No, it was actually a process at that time. Now with the open borders policy, you know, we don't know who's coming through. So when I worked for the RNC, I did the immigration report, and one of the things that I talked about in 2022 was, hey, if we don't start looking on how we could start improving policy and how we could start making programs, this is going to get worse. And 2024 comes around, and now we have 800 million illegal immigrants in the U.S. And back then, everybody thought I was crazy. You're like, Cam, there's no way.
So when Trump, I'm just curious, I'm not trying to, paint you in a corner, but when Trump, did you feel like Trump's immigration policies were better? Because it seems to me, I'm a conservative. Sometimes I don't even consider myself a Republican, but I'm a conservative. And I don't think an open border policy is an immigration policy. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. And we know it's not, because we've got gang members taking it from Venezuela, taking over apartment buildings in Colorado. So we know that can't be right. Did you feel like Trump did anything to kind of make things better? I mean,
so he only had 4 years, and to run a country 4 years is not much time, in my opinion, right? There was a little bit of improvement, but once you had to switch offices, anything they were trying to build just kind of collapses. So one of the things that I did see was when I had my RNC office in Oklahoma City, I would have a lot of immigrants who were legal that had workers visas, student passports, people who were trying to get their green cards, people who are trying to get their citizenship, looking for classes, trying to accomplish that American dream of becoming a American citizen. So I saw a lot of that. Now, if you go to anywhere where there's a consulate in the state of Oklahoma, you don't see that. You don't see people who are trying to apply for visas. They're just getting a manila envelope, and these are all the instructions for you to go from point A to point B, and I'll see you later.
That doesn't sound like a good plan.
No, it sets everybody for failure. The state, the community, the person who's here, the neighbor. It's not good. Let me put it that way.
So you made a reference to the Mexican consulate. That's another thing I've been extremely critical about. We're not a border town. We're not a coastal town. So we're not, getting planes full of people, right. Why do we have a Mexican consulate? This is curious to me, and I don't understand it. And I've heard not good things about it. Is there anything that you can tell me about that?
So councils are created for people who are in this country to get their paperwork, like for example, like a birth certificate, some kind of documents, or trying to, like, say, vote for the country. But the councils are there to assist those individuals, right? And it's not just the Mexican consulate; it's also the Guatemalan consulate that we have here in Oklahoma City.
The what?
And the Guatemalan.
Oh, Guatemala. We have a Guatemalan consulate.
Yeah, and there are traveling consulates that come around in the state of Oklahoma, and they are here for a week, and people from different parts of the world will go to let's say they'll go to a specific area like Norman, Moore, Oklahoma City, where there's traffic of that community, and they'll come in for that week, and if anybody needs documentation, any of that, they could start working on it. So is it good or bad? In my opinion, we should work on Oklahomans first, and then once we have Oklahomans all put together, we could start helping everybody else. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I mean, I still guess I'm a little incredulous about, because I would think that if you need documentation or something like that, then I know we have it here because I had to go take the girls there and I had to go fill out paperwork there. What's the name of the government agency where you, Immigration and Naturalization. Why couldn't I come up with that? Thunk, thunk. So I know we have an Immigration and Naturalization office in Oklahoma. I remember where it is. It's over on I-40 and Meridian. There's a big one over there. Why can't they just go there and get that paperwork taken care of? Why are we having a consulate?
Because a lot of times those third world countries or even other countries don't have the sophisticated technology to have that information readily available in the US. Does that make sense?
No.
So if let's say if
I
you
still
are
wasn't
born,
getting it.
like say in a jungle, right, and there's really not much documentation, and you immigrated to the US,
Okay.
there are policies within that nation on how to get the individual birth certificate, so on and so forth.
Yes, I found that with Africa to be the case in Zambia.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So yes, those immigration policies are there for the US, but it's not a reflection on the other side, on the other nation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
A little more, but then I've had people tell me that the consulate, especially the Mexican consulate here, and this may be bad intel or information, I don't know, but I've been told that there's actually more a helping of not so much trying to be legal as trying to stay here.
And this is where we start walking, towing that line where this is not Mexico, it's the US. So why should we care type mentality, which I disagree 100%. I'm in America. I want everybody to follow law and order. But if, like say if a certain nation thinks that, hey, there are ways to exploit a law or there's ways to start doing certain things a certain way without the approval of the US, they're paying for it with our taxpayer money. That's where I have a hang up. That's where I will say we should have better policies to prevent that in the US. In Oklahoma.
So let's go to the task force because, and Jessica, I wanted to ask you a question. So there is apparently a Hispanic council that was created to kind of help advise the governor. Is that an accurate thing to say?
Yes.
Okay. And you and Cam both are on that council.
We're part of the council, but not part of the task force.
Okay. So you advise your council can advise the governor, but then you weren't people that were invited to be on the task force, even though you were invited to be on the council. Is that accurate to say?
So with the council, there's appointments to different areas in various positions. And the point is representation of the Hispanic community, obviously. But the task force that was created is independent, though it is somehow also part of the council. Like there are council members that are also, there are council members who are also were independently appointed to be part of the governor's task force.
Well, and Jessica, real quick.
And Cam and I are not part of that task force, the independent task force. We're just part of the broader council.
Well, Jessica, real quick, just for clarification, is the task force, are those all appointed by the governor? And then like the council, like who makes these actual appointments or recommendations? Like Well, for each one, for the council you're on, and then also for the task force.
So my understanding for the task force specifically is that those were the governor's appointed people that were selected. And then, sorry, I want to make sure I address that correctly. And then in terms of the other positions, like there are various positions throughout Oklahoma, like, various arts councils, various
right,
things of that nature.
right.
And I believe that that is something that might be discussed between the governor and the council chair would be my understanding of how those appointments would be made. At this time, though, I am not specifically a part of any particular
committee,
board, or committee.
Okay. All right. But the council.
To my knowledge, you are either, correct, Cam?
Mm-mm.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So I'm going to bring in, if you will give me just a second, I would like to bring in this, so there it is. All right. So this is the I guess we did
Oklahoma
go over
State
it, didn't we?
Work
Permits and
Yeah,
Visa
we
Task
did.
Force
Yeah, I forgot
2024
about that.
recommendations. This is the whole, there are 28 pages of it when you include the meeting minutes. And I just wanted to bring up the members. So the members of the task force were the Secretary of Public Safety, the Consul of Mexico, Miguel Garcia, an appointee of the governor.
I'm going to see if I can fast forward since we've already talked about that. Because otherwise, it's just boring.
Any of these people. But the fact that the Consul of Mexico in Oklahoma City, I mean, I guess I see the point in that if the consulate, which I still have a problem with, but if they're going to do something with visas and work permits, I'm assuming they would want to know. But I'm curious to know. And you know, Brett Farley's a nice guy, but it is a Catholic archdiocese, and they don't have a lot of problem with unchecked immigration they seem to help a lot of people do that. So it seems to me, and when I read it, I kind of felt like maybe there was a little more liberal bend to it. I don't know if you can speak to that or not. Maybe I'm just off on that.
So I will speak about it. So Jenni, you and I have been to a lot of the Republican conventions. Has anybody of those individuals, have you seen them at any of those conventions or at a precinct event or county event? Because I haven't.
Well, I personally haven't, no. And it is a Republican governor. And I will just say this. I was really, I'm going to say unhappy. I think that's an okay word. I was extremely unhappy. Michael's laughing at this point now with the permits and visa task force recommendations. And I would just be curious to know if you had the same thoughts I did. But I know that the Republican, the whatever that is, the thing that starts with an R, is not for giving driver's licenses to people that aren't citizens. And I guess that was the other thing that bothered me. And maybe you guys can help me flesh this out.
Sure.
If you can be here legally and not be a citizen, that's what a visa is, right?
Well, you're legal. You have a legal status. So
you have a legal status.
And it has a expiration date for you to return or get an extension.
So that you have gotten this visa, or whether it's for school or for work or for whatever it is, you have this visa. like there are a lot of people that I know of that have HB1 visas. A lot of people at the Dove School, because we talked about this before at Dove Charter School, they're Turkish. They come over, displaced teachers who would be working here, but they come over from Turkey on HB1 visas. And we're paying people who are out of the country, even though they have a legal status. Oklahoma taxpayers are paying them to work in this country when a teacher that, you know, lived in Oklahoma could do that job. So that's my irritation with the HB1 visas. And I know that there are companies in Oklahoma, I know for a fact, that hire people who have HB1 visas instead of hiring citizens, because the people on HB1 visas are cheaper to hire. So to me, that's pretty obnoxious. I mean, thoughts?
It takes away from the blue collar, in my opinion, or not the blue collar, the white collar, of the people who have prepared themselves here in the U.S., people who are teachers, people who are workers. Yes, they may have cheaper labor, but the individuals who are citizens here are going to be ultimately paying the price. One of the things that I always talk about is, yes, you know, you always, as an employer, you always want to have the cheaper labor because, you know, it's cheaper benefits. It's like a trickle effect, I want to call it. But if we take away jobs for people, there are other communities that need it. And I always talk about the incarceration community. There's 66,000 incarcerated individuals that if they don't have a job, they're most likely going to have a reoffend and they're going to be back in the system. So why not create a program where we could start taking care of those individuals rather than, hey, here is this individual who is not from Oklahoma, and let's take care of this person rather than somebody who is going through the system and set them for success in the future.
Okay, I'm going to stop that for a second because this is really a good question. Stephanie asks, are there incentives for employers to hire these H-1B? And good for you for getting it right, since I keep saying it wrong, Stephanie. Are there incentives for employers to hire these H-1B beside cheaper wages? I don't know. Do you, Michael? I just know that it costs less.
I don't think there are incentives, but I have several people that I know that have H-1B employees, and I'll text them right now and ask them.
Well, if you would do that, that would be super helpful, and we'll just cut back in.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think there's any state incentives. I think the incentive for an employer to go, because I know it's a headache for the one that I'm going to text. I know it's a headache for him to go through the whole process to bring, you know, to get the H-1B and, you know, do all that. So I know, but the incentive would be he can pay a lower wage, you know, and have a workforce that he, you know,
right,
can kind of count on to be at a certain level.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so Stephanie, Michael will check on that because I don't personally know. I just know from my situation of knowing about H-1B visas that they do it specifically to, and they do them they're online people. And so they don't even live here in America to work. They live in their own country and they get H-1B visas to work here. So, yeah, we'll get that looked into. And then Amber said, Senator Jett has a good handle on what paths non-citizens can legally have other versions of driver's licenses in Oklahoma and the United States to be able to drive. Jett brought these up on the Senate floor when arguing against driver's license for non-citizens. Okay, we ready to go back?
Yep.
Is an excellent point.
Thanks.
No, I mean, that's an excellent point because I hadn't even thought about that, but that's an excellent point. Why are we doing that? And here's another part that was in the recommendation. They were very careful not to say driver's licenses, but it's like a a public safety card that they can to operate a motor vehicle. And there's, I think, a concern for a number of us about people who aren't legal residents of Oklahoma, citizens voting in elections, because you may be here legally on a visa, but that doesn't mean you can walk into your polling place and vote. I mean, do either one of you have, thoughts on that topic? Because as Republicans, we're not supposed to be okay with that.
Jessica, do you want to go first, or because I feel like I'm taking over?
No, I'm listening.
You're a man, Cam.
I'm listening. Plus, like, I keep looking, and I'm like, my whole screen is like green. So I know my computer's. I'll tell you, it's a 2012. I'm hanging on to it, man. Okay, that's why the lighting is terrible on it. But no, so when I think about the driving privileges, like, to me, it's so much larger than that, because I work in social services, a nonprofit here with Oklahoma, and so I see kind of the gamut.
If we can pause it for just a second, Jenny, my friend just texted back and said that I asked him if there's any incentives for the H-1B hiring, and he said no. And in fact, the last administration, so he's talking about the Trump administration, made it really hard and decreased the quota. So as to how many can even get an H-1B each quarter. So I guess.
So then what is the purpose of doing this? Because it's sounding more and more to me like the purpose of doing this is to screw up our voting system. I mean, because if there's no real,
it's ultimately, I think it's greed. Yes, it's gonna affect. It's gonna affect the population. It's gonna affect electors and things like that. Ultimately, and probably those people are gonna vote yes, but when you have corporate greed, if you're able to hire someone at a quarter or half of what you have to pay someone else and total benefits and the whole 9 yards, you're gonna get the lobbyist money for these big corporations or whoever, to be able to bring in those people. But ultimately, to me, it's the same thing as, why did we move all our manufacturing offshore?
Right.
Why do we not?
It's the damn Chamber of Commerce. Everything's the bottom line.
Yeah,
they never think of
exactly.
anything but the bottom line.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt.
And these all have long-term consequences. Well, on another note, so I've just gotten a message from somebody, basically, that says that, and I won't use the exact place, but the H-1B visas that this person is aware of, they're employed, but then they have to donate a portion of their funds back to their home country to sponsor more people coming here. Okay, we shall continue. It will only get worse from here. Those of you who are watching, just FYI, not to spoil anything, it only gets worse. So
of Oklahomans and particularly Oklahomans who are struggling in some way, shape, or form. And then we also see some of the undocumented community that also requires, the same services, if you will. The biggest thing is that most of these clients, when I think of the undocumented, and I'm not just referring to Mexico specifically, I'm just talking undocumented, is that they don't possess, they don't know how to read and communicate in their own true language to start off with. They are communicating usually some form of a slang or like a street vernacular, because the communication, you could have a translator going and it's just, even the translator can get burnt out. But my point is that with those barriers, they you can't even like really read. You're not reading the sign. You're not adjusting to the laws of a driver's exam. I know that when my boys were 16, they had to do their version of behind the wheel and then go and sit for these tests and show that they knew how to do, parallel park. But there was also the written portion to pass. And so I'm just really like my take on it is I'm very curious to see how that would pan out in terms of if you're giving driving privileges to people who probably can't read or even speak in their own language, and then you're going to try and adapt like our driving test skills, things of that nature. That's just one portion of it. And so I would think that those that are just driving illegally would just continue driving illegally, because what would be the benefit to them? They would have to go through that first set of hoops, right? Like the hoops like we're talking about with immigration. That's a hoop in order to do that. And I just think that, especially with the communication barriers, that I wouldn't personally see a huge demographic of that population that would just, gung ho go for it. So that's one of the first issues I see with it.
It's interesting that you say that, because we all remember the Haitians and the cats and that kind of thing. But I mean, apparently that was really accurate. And I read a very sad story about a lady who was killed in Springfield, Ohio, by a Haitian driver. And he had some kind of a paper, whatever.
Right.
But he was driving and got too close to the curb and killed this lady. And I don't remember who it was that said in the article, I've been to these countries. They have no driving laws in their own countries. I mean, I've been to seaside towns in Mexico and taken a cab and gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I
grew up in a border town. So I grew up 45 minutes from the Sonora-Nogales Mexican border. I mean, that was where I grew up.
Yeah.
And so it was very common, when when he was talking about 1986 policy, I was about 10 years old. I wouldn't have known what that looked like. I mean, it was just on the regular, the way people were moving in and out of Tucson, Arizona. But with driving, I mean, we would travel into Nogales, Sonora, for a day of shopping, those kind of things. And the driving is so scary. And you think, oh gosh, when we're over here, that's not how it is. But the fact is that everybody who was driving that same way was spending their day, if not longer, on the streets of Arizona. And nobody had, a driver's license, let alone insurance. And so it was just, there was a lot of hit and runs. I do remember that very distinctly growing up there. So I can only imagine what that would look like.
Yeah, I think that's the thing when they talk about public safety,
right?
I think you make such an excellent point with that. How is it public safety to give somebody who doesn't understand the laws of this country something that's going to allow them to do something that all of us have had to follow laws to do? It's almost to think that that's somehow public safety,
right?
It's we were talking the other day about
it's a privilege.
It is a privilege. We were talking about surveillance cameras the other day and automatic license plate readers, and we only have them because we were forced to buy insurance against uninsured drivers. And I was talking to somebody about that the other day, and they were like, how are you going to make somebody get insurance when they won't get insurance, when the only time you're going to get them in custody is if they've hit something and then somebody's got, you know what I'm saying? So
right.
We do all these things for public safety. And then you're like, how is that actually public safety?
Right. It's just a circuit. It's just a circle that goes nowhere. Right.
So, well, that was, yeah. So, Cam, what are your thoughts on that then?
So essentially, I thought that being part of the governor's council, we would come in and give advice. And one of the things that I've noticed when I worked for the RNC on the Hispanic side was there was a lack of understanding on the Western culture. So what we think is common sense, such as, make sure you have your driver's license, liability for insurance at minimum, all that kind of stuff to us is normal because we are raised or we were taught about how we are expected to function in this society. But when I lived in Colombia, I could give you from experience, the stop sign was just a suggestion. They would just drive through. And to me, when I was a kid, I was like, oh, okay, they're grown up. They know what they're doing. I remember seeing friends of my family members that will drive drinking, drinking alcohol. That was normal. Not wearing a seatbelt. That was not a thing. Turn signals. Good luck with that. So there was a lot of lack of education in that realm. So if you have a gap that big and then you expect for somebody to come in and here's your driver's license, you're most likely going to set that individual to failure because they don't understand what the laws are. They don't understand what they're supposed to do. And if something happens to an individual where they lose their life, where's the liability at? Does the government take care of that, or who becomes responsible of that? I've always think about, hey, if we're going to create something, why not create a program where we have individuals having who are coming to this country? Hey, there's a Western culture or Oklahoma culture. You need to understand that obey the traffic laws, nutrition. When you go to a grocery, these are the coins and this is the value of money. Because I remember when I saw a penny, I didn't know what a penny was. I didn't know what 25 cents was, because in our country, everything was labeled. So 25 cents, it said 25 cents. But when you come here, good luck. So there's a lot of lack of information in that realm.
So my question for you then, it is kind of getting begged listening to you talk here. So you're on the governor's council. Has any of this stuff ever come up? I mean, have you ever felt comfortable explaining these thoughts on these topics, or?
So I've been to, what is it, Jessica? 3 meetings? We've been in 3 meetings. Two meetings. And is usually a presentation of what other individuals are accomplishing. And it's just like, hey, here you go. This is what's going on. Like the governor's task. I didn't know anything about it until I was sitting there, and I was like, wow, okay. I guess there's movement, because we were supposed to come back around during summer and start being part of those committees, start talking to people, start gathering information, bringing the community together, right? Because the Hispanic community is growing. And one of my fears is that if we don't start teaching our Hispanics that are here in the state of Oklahoma on how to act, how to understand the law, how to educate, we're not going to have a good future for that community, for my community, essentially.
You had some slides that you wanted, or do you want me to throw those up so you can talk about that specific thing?
I want to ask Cam something real quick
Okay.
before we go into that, Jenny. So just to get this straight, you've had on the council, you've had 2 meetings, but it was more a presentation towards you and not necessarily like all of your input back from the community. About
it was a body of 30, so it was just more of a presentation and look what we're doing, and everybody got a high five, and I was just confused because I didn't know what I never got an input. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. So there's like no measure of like effectiveness. They're not like coming to you and saying, hey, how is this working in the community? What's going on? Is this how, none of that. It's more just hey, here, congratulations. We're doing a great job.
No, if someone would have come in and asked me, hey, Cam, what is the number one thing that the Hispanics are looking for in the state of Oklahoma? I'll talk about the 5 issues: healthcare, food prices, gas prices, education, and then immigration. So why is this one of the last ones that we look at?
It's just so surprising that they would put you on this, but not actually use the resource of your reach into the community to actually, kind of do something.
Yeah. No, I've met with plenty of teachers from different schools. They've asked me, hey, this is what we see for our children. How did you do it when you were growing up? I've connected with children over there, and they've asked me like, hey, if you're going to a doctor's appointment, is it okay for you to take your child to go speak on the parents' behalf because they don't know the language? Because there's a barrier. And my first thing is like, depends. You don't want to take your boy into an OBGYN appointment for your mom. That happened to me. And those are the little experiences and recommendations that I will say that it may help the community, where you could start, building up in the community. You can start building up the community.
Well, Jessica, I was unaware of your background. And I mean, to me, it would seem that you would be ideally suited for something like that.
In the background.
You what?
I said I have a dog in the background that's decidedly to
that's okay.
Make himself known. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? So
yeah, sure. So you seem like you're kind of ideal. I mean, if I was putting together a task force, I would have Jessica Perez on my task force because you literally come directly into contact with these people, and it's what you do in your job at the nonprofit. So right. I guess I'm confused as to, I mean, you seem like a resource that's simply not being utilized.
Sure. Like I said, that I'm not a part of the task force.
Right.
I'm not a part of any of the communications that are involved in that. So I don't speak on their behalf.
Right.
I'll just put that out
But just
there.
as a member of the council, it would seem like,
but as a council,
yeah.
I mean, what I see the most, in addition to like the bulk work where people are coming in, for various services that they need, is also a big focus on immigration. A lot of them are just here saying, I mean, they're in a panic, thinking that some of them think by November, after the election, they're going to get deported. There are some that have this thought process right now that the minute that election happens, the next day, which of course tells you they don't understand the law anyways, right? So, but I do see an influx of the phone calls and the direct in-person of multiple countries that represented. I need help with immigration. And we simply just don't have the resources. Even at my level, we don't have the resources to even assist with that. Like, we haven't been designated all of this spending flux to be able to address that. So we don't have the capacity nor the resources. And so even at that basic level, to see this shuffling, if you will, of people who are looking for this service, I think it's then interesting that with the task force, they're trying to put these people in, my understanding is like work to connect employers with skilled, qualified candidates, if you will. And I think that works perhaps when you've got people that have been here for a long, long time because they're already working. It doesn't translate very well into whatever en masse of people have just come in and you just have no clue.
Well, I just had a question. This just struck me while we were thinking. So I know because I read the task force recommendations, and one of the things that they said was, well, that it's harder to get college professors and teachers to be able to integrate them into the system and to be able to get them the paperwork that they needed. But it just hit me then, though, that if you were, like I said, if you're over here on an HB1 visa, for example, you're on a visa to work here anyway. Right. And so if you're here to teach as a professor, you would have a visa already. Correct. So I'm trying to figure out who this task force is actually directed at, if it's not people who are here illegally, because people who are here legally, non-residents who are here legally, already have papers. And if you were going to come here to do a job, like be a professor or work in a, in somebody's company, you would have to have a visa. That company, I know this works this way for a fact, that company has to hire the person from over there and get their paperwork for them in order for them to be able to work for them. Right. The sponsorship. Again, I'm trying to figure out then, because that just hit me as we were talking, who else could this task force be talking about except not non-residents that are here legally, but illegal I mean, does that seem like I'm barking up the wrong tree?
No, because again, it's like, it's trying to, you're right. So if they've already applied for their visa to come and work, and they're a professor coming from whatever, Dubai, they've already put their information together, and they're going to perform their work, and the employer is already sponsoring them, university, whatnot, right? Same thing when you have people who are seeking, traditional to become a citizen here, and they may have their church sponsor them or be their not their employer, but just sponsor them. You're basically vouching for them. Yes, they're going to be here. We're a part of this as that, integration towards citizenship. So to me, it's like, it almost does feel like it's to address the newer people that are coming into the US. And, I grew up in a border town, so I can say this. You don't typically get your physicians and your engineers and your professors and your doctors coming across a dangerous border, right? That's not how they're coming. And so typically, and I mean, this is growing up Tucson, right? So this was on the regular. I mean, you're getting the people that are closer to the more impoverished area. And that's when it comes back to, they're not even speaking their own language. They're not even following their own, their own laws. And here they are. So, yeah, I found that to be interesting, because again, I would think that the people that were already here, that already had their information out there, would be able to be connected with their employers.
May I say, so Jenni, the people who you're referring to is the 10% who come to this country. The 90% of the people who come in, and I'm not just talking about Hispanics, I'm talking about
anybody. Well, sure.
90% of those individuals are illiterate in their own language. So when they come to this country, they are at 190% illiterate. So what is the expectation?
Damn, 90%, honestly.
Yeah. And like Jessica said, their dialect, or it's kind of like saying, Australians and Americans speak the same language. Yes, they speak English, but they have different dialects. Same thing in Spanish. So if you speak to somebody who is from country Mexico to somebody who's from Spain, they could speak the basic Spanish, but not completely, because there's going to be a disconnection. So, like Jessica said, there is a lack of resource, and nobody has been addressing it at all. You're talking about
that visa task force did not address that. That was not addressed in that task force.
In the RNC, I had individuals who didn't know how to sign their signature, so they would just do a circle because they didn't have a signature.
Oh my goodness. I
To both of you
don't
guys-
think this is making things better for me.
Yeah. Well, to both of you guys, like when you go to like as your function on the council, like the council itself, when you make, I mean, I'm sure you make some kind of recommendations to someone that goes up the ladder. I mean, does it even go up the ladder very far? I mean, you look at Jessica, who's literally boots on the ground at probably the most, you know, lowest level of all these people coming in, and that's who you deal with on a daily basis. I mean, I would think you would be the most important resource for every level, all the way up to the governor's office, is to know what Jessica is saying and interacting with, and what's happening with all these people. I mean, how far up the ladder does it even, or are you even allowed to give recommendations? I mean, what's the actual function like of the council, do you think?
In terms of with the council, I wouldn't say I'm uncomfortable or couldn't, speak to the governor or speak to my representatives. But in terms of the council, no, it's not like they said, "Hey, Jessica, you've worked with, the opioid crisis in Oklahoma. What part of that are you seeing? Is this popular?" Like, no, no, nothing like that.
Yeah,
I
never
vote for you.
I've never given any constructive feedback, and haven't heard anything. We haven't gotten like a roster of emails of like, "Hey, contact your committee chair or vice chair."
Right.
None of that.
Now, is that just strictly political, or is it a breakdown of the actual structure of how, these things are? I mean, there's just doesn't seem to be a function to it. Other than just saying, yeah, we have this council, yeah, we have this task force. I don't know how they can't utilize you guys.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, let me ask you this, because we're kind of on that for a second. But Kim, you had some slides, and I do want you to talk about them because I thought they were important. So can I throw them up and have you talk about them?
Sure.
Okay. So which one do you want me to start with?
That one's perfect. So this is the nation's map. The blue is your sanctuary states, meaning if there are illegal immigrants that law enforcement cannot exercise any immigration law on them, right? California is known as the golden sanctuary state because there's a lot of law enforcement that cannot really do anything except that unless there's a break in the law. Now, if you're here illegally, in my opinion, you're already breaking the law, but that's just me. So the green is states that are not sanctuary states. Now, what's the difference between why is this relevant? If you switch to the next slide. So here you could see how the political parties are kind of divided. Some states are a little bit purple, some of them are a little bit red. But when you start looking at this map, you start seeing where sanctuary state starts flipping a state from red to blue. Happened in California, happened in Colorado, happened in Utah, and so on and so forth.
So let me go back one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's look at Colorado for specifically. So yeah, Colorado's blue, New Mexico's blue. I mean, yeah, Nevada, Arizona's getting, purpley.
Mm-hmm. And if you go to the next one, you can see more in depth right there. And this is for our election, coming up election. This is what we're seeing. Same. The map is literally the same way. Now, why is this important? Well, if this starts happening, our taxes are going to start going up. Our taxes start going up. Look at California. We have Californians who are moving to Oklahoma like none other because of our way of life.
Yeah.
And the first thing we always tell them is, keep your California politics in California. Make sure
Don't
that
Californicate my Oklahoma.
Exactly. Now, one of my concerns is somebody who applies for asylum and they get temporary citizenship. Are they able to vote in their local elections? So if that happens, these people are asylum seekers, and right now we're looking at a 10-year, between 6 to 10 year for them to go through the process. So that means many other elections, including the census. Because remember, census, they don't care much about, your legal status. All they care is how many people live in that home.
Right.
So electoral college is going to affect based on population. Federal representatives, the same thing. So I'm sorry, I'm going to say this again, but it's a trickle effect again. So
just to clarify, Cam, the trickle effect. Go back to that first map. The red and blue map was the electoral college map that was on, and it just so happened to almost be the same as the sanctuary city, the sanctuary states map. Almost matches exactly to where the red and blue dividing line is now. So basically, what you're saying is, as more and more of these illegals have privilege or sheltered in somewhere, I don't want to say that, that's not necessarily, but right, as they have more and more rights, I guess, within each one of these states, the state winds up turning more and more blue.
Correct. So each state goes through the same path. They get driving privileges, driver's license, a slack on law and order. And once you start getting that, you start seeing more of the blue state. I'm all for immigration as long as it's legal. All for immigration. But once that starts happening, then you start seeing a flip, little by little. It happened in California, again, happened in Colorado, happened in Nevada, Michigan, Illinois, to the point that everybody starts saying, going, what was the first thing? And when you look back in time, if the governor or previous governors are appointing only independent or liberal appointees to those boards or councils, it changes the outlook of that state. So even though they're like, oh, this person's a good person, sure, but when you have a bulk of like say Democrats, independents as your board members or council or subcommittees, all that kind of stuff, it becomes harder and harder for that state to stay red.
Well, and I'll say this because I was thinking about this while you were talking too. It is not racist to want to have people here who are here legally and and I hope it makes sense after hearing you and Jessica talk. And especially, I mean, I think after listening to you talk, I would hope that people would understand how ridiculous it is to hear, well, you're a racist. If you say, no, I don't want people having driver's license who aren't here legally. I don't want people who, I think there's a background and a reason for why we don't want that happening. And that doesn't make us racist.
Yeah, the increase of human traffic is going to happen if the state turns blue. There's a study, why don't we have a stricter laws on human trafficking?
So I'm just going to stop that 1 second. We have some really great comments over here. So those of you who are on, if you can hang, we're almost finished with the recorded video and we'll start talking about those, but we've got some really great, especially from Amber, who's from Oregon, and she's got some really great comments. So just hang tight and we'll get these on there at the end. What's the last slide that you had? Because that looked very colorful.
So this is the Trump and Harris slide, and it talks about how the Midwest is red, but the larger cities are blue. If you look at the numbers, I'm a little bit scared because the deciding states, the flip states, are the ones who are going to elect our next president.
Right.
And if we
Right.
have voter apathy this year, my goodness, we're gonna lose. We're gonna lose our president.
Yeah,
So-
I do. Yeah, I totally see what you're saying there. So as we were talking just a second ago, I thought about one other topic, which suddenly has slipped my mind, but I'm hoping we'll get back on it here before we close out. If you had, and I'm going to open this up to both of you, if
Sure.
you had the ability to, I mean, just immediately in this council, for example, say, here's what we need to do. What would you say that we need to do? Is it to help the people who are not here legally, who don't understand anything about what's going on here, to get them back home where they need to be? I mean, how do you feel like we solve this at this point? And is the idea for the state to just look the other way and say, I remember what I was going to say, as a matter of fact. My concern after I read this task force, and I'd like to hear both of you just briefly talk about this. After I read that, it appeared to me that this was a way to get more workers into the state. And we hear from the Chamber of Commerce all the time that there are jobs that are open that Oklahomans won't do. And so my thought is we need to get people into those jobs that don't know the language, don't even know how to speak in their own language. Are we even going to instruct them to get them into a job when the communication is so hard? And the whole idea appears to me to be, now this is me, I'm not speaking for you, I'm speaking about me personally. It seems to me like a great way to get illegal immigrants in here and eventually work them toward getting to vote. That's my thought. Because I don't see how we're actually even, especially after what you said, Jessica, I don't see how we're helping these people. And we have already talked about the fact that the people who are here legally, that are documented people that are here legally, meaning they have a visa to work or whatever, they already do, or the businesses are doing that for them. I don't know. So what are your thoughts just on the fact that, and I know I kind of went all over and I'm sorry about that, but just that does it feel to you like this is the way of bringing in just a workforce for people that aren't going to do these kinds of jobs? Or, I mean, does that sound, I don't know, thoughts? Jessica?
I mean, I almost feel more just like I feel like just every other citizen that's just a spectator, kind of watching whatever comes out of the task force, whether it's in written form like what you pulled up, or something that I've read or that is going to be told to us. I guess I'm just confused by that. I feel like the people that are already here are connecting the dots with working. They're connecting the dots, even if they are not here legally. They're connecting the dots. They're working in the restaurants. They're working in construction. They're being hired on. It's this subcontractor who might be documented. Blah blah blah. It runs the gamut. I feel like the people that are here that are working, they're already doing it. You're not necessarily having to connect the dots to say, well, we want to create something to connect very skilled workers, like a teacher with this job, again, I just, that to me, that doesn't make sense, because they're already saying, you know, I'm a teacher from Dubai here. I'm looking for, and I tell you, plenty of districts will take them. There's a shortage of teachers if that was the case, right? So I don't necessarily see that as being for those that have been here for a long span of time. It just doesn't appear that way on the surface.
Cam?
So, kind of what Jessica said, but I want to expand a little bit. If you're going to have a, like Michael was saying, is this a political thing or is this something functional? If I was going to create a task force, my first job would be, hey, let me bring the, a good Republican, let's bring Tommy Johnson, and let's talk about law and order.
Oh yeah, why was Tommy Johnson not asked? He's the sheriff, for Pete's sakes.
Exactly. Let's bring him in. Let's talk to him about what we could improve first and start working with law, right? Number two, okay, so we need to start teaching. What can we how can we talk to one of Ryan Walter's board appointees and see what we could work on for, like, say, the children, the education, sure. Or if you're looking for someone smart, there's any of the universities, OU, OSU, UCO, you name it, that if you reach out and say, hey, can we look for something that can bring awareness, or like a social class for individuals who are here in the state of Oklahoma, that if they want to start working, you can start improving them, like teach them about traffic laws, all that kind of stuff. Again, having Tommy Johnson, having all these individuals working together, that will facilitate individuals to become successful. Again, in the future, they will become successful. But when you have individuals who have, like, say, driver's privileges, that don't know anything about the U.S., you're going to set them to failure. And like the other day, I want to switch the subject real quick. The other day, I went to a Venezuelan anti-dictatorship on September 28th. And the individuals there, the majority of the people there, they were saying, we want our country back because it's dictatorship.
Yeah.
Once they get rid of that dictator, they want to go move back to Venezuela. They said, I was born there. I want to die there.
Yeah.
And if you look from South America, from the border down, there's a lot of countries that have corruption problems and dictatorship, socialism. So, of course, people are going to try to come to this country, but are they really here for true asylum purposes? Is your life in danger? Are you here because someone's trying to kill you? Those special cases, rather than saying, I just want to make a little bit more money than what I was doing in the other country.
I'm just going to chime in. So in the work that I do, we can help undocumented. There are resources, but they do have to meet a criteria. It is so rare that I can make someone, you go through the list, are you an asylum seeker? And literally you're hitting none of those things where you can really assist them, because they're not asylum seekers. And I mean, I will go through each one, categorically. Have you been trafficked? Have you, and I can never, each time the answer is no. And so that's what I've seen here. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm just saying, of the clients that I've attempted to assist and work with under the protocols to be able to help with, typically I'm not even seeing asylum seekers. So
wow.
Yeah. So it creates a bigger burden, not for us, but for the taxpayer.
Yeah, and I guess that's a question. We're supposed to be paying for all of this. Yeah, we don't seem to have a say in any of it. I that's the crazy thing about it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we're about at the end of an hour. I mean, we managed to have a great conversation. So because of the fact that this is recorded, can I just get, if people, when we play the broadcast on Friday, if people have questions and want me to reach out to you on their behalf, I suspect that's probably fine.
Sure.
Knowing you, Cam, yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, guys, this was a very great discussion, and I so appreciate you taking the time to come on because I don't have this perspective. Michael, do you?
No, absolutely not.
This was pretty eye-opening for me, and I think it will probably be for other people as well. So I just thank you so much. Anything else before we hop off of here today?
Jessica?
No, I don't have anything. I don't have anything.
I will say just in my opinion, Jenni, what you're doing, Michael, what you're doing, having those true conversations, those help because people start listening. You're not watching those the media that is portraying things that are, oh yeah, our nation is fine, don't worry. Those
Right.
people who are coming over the border, they're not eating cats. Again, culture. They're not being taught the culture. So
Yeah.
whenever you hear those kind of accusations or those points, the first question will go, hey, have those people been taught how to be an American? If the answer is no,
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. It was a very eye-opening conversation, and we just couldn't have had that with anybody else. So thank you so much. And holy cow. I do hope that people were actually watching this because we had a nice audience. I wish it had been larger because I think, do you think most people know what they heard today?
No, not in any way. I mean, look at what a surprise it was to us. And I think it's important also because Cam kind of touched on this multiple times. He's not necessarily against any of that, but he thinks it's proper that those people need to really assimilate to our culture more than the other way around. It's like we just go in reverse.
Stephanie says it was an education. and yeah. So I want to go back up because we had some really good comments from Amber and throw them in. Think about the driver's license for illegals, non-citizens, so they can drive legally when here working on farms and ranches pushed here in Oklahoma. I know I keep bringing up Oregon, but I would bet money if someone did research, this is also a reason for Oregon giving driver's license to illegals and non-citizens that have established what Oregon allows and residency laws for non-citizens. So I don't know how you could have watched this video and listened to our guests without having some kind of logical concern that this is all political BS. I mean, honestly, and it went,
Jenni.
And I'm going to get some more of Amber's here in just a second, but I want to point something out. So we did the podcast about the flock cameras, about the ALPR readers, which, by the way, went viral in case you want to see it and be part of the viral video over there on YouTube. And I mentioned in that video, I said, why? Because we got the ALPR cameras because we had to have a law that made us buy insurance against uninsured motorists because public safety, right? And we went through that, and I said, why do we have that law? And nobody could really figure reason out beyond that, except that some insurance companies went to our legislators and said, hey, we need to sell more insurance, write this law for us, which then resulted in, as all laws do, well, I should say most laws do, they take our individual freedom away, right? That's what they do. And so they wrote that law to do that. So I see this thing kind of happening in the
very same way, because if you really wanted public safety, if you really wanted to help somebody, instead of forcing everybody to buy insurance when the only people who are going to buy insurance are the people who would buy it anyway, and now you're forcing poorer people who don't have that money and who are just banking on the fact that they won't have an accident, now you're forcing them to eat into their budget for something that they wouldn't have done because it wasn't right for their family at the time. So if you really wanted to help people, I found out the other day that my neighbor's father was hit by an illegal alien in a car, and was an uninsured motorist, because why would he have insurance, right? And he ended up having brain damage so extensive that he had to be basically taken care of the whole rest of his life. And that's just an absolute horror show. So what if you really wanted to care for the public, you would set up a fund, because there are rolling funds everywhere in this state. You just bet me money. Every agency has one. Most committees have one. So don't cry and tell me we can't set up a committee. You can if you want to. You sure can. Anyway, you set up a little rolling fund with the insurance department that's set up for people who don't have insurance, who get hit by an uninsured driver. That would be helpful. That wouldn't impinge on our personal liberty. But here you have exactly the same thing going on right now. While if you really wanted to help people become citizens, you would give them classes. You would force them to do what's right and pay, because we had that great discussion about the fact that, like Jessica said, these people can't even read and write in their own language.
Yeah.
In their own language. And
Well,
they're going to
they're
come
a
here
draw.
and suddenly know what the hell they're doing here.
Yeah. Well, think about it, Jenny. They're a draw in their own country. They're drawing the resources in their own country because they can't even contribute there, because they can't read, they can't write, they can't do anything. So what? Of course, their country wants to ship them out and go send them up here or over here, rather. Well, I mean, why not?
Well, and we seem to want to take those people in because somehow they're going to perform, and it's always the same crap that we get from the Chamber of Commerce. Well, these people are doing jobs that other people won't do. How do you know? We've given everybody so much government money, so much taxpayer money to just sit on their butts. How do you know, if you don't just take that all away, that people would actually take jobs so that they could work? But you don't want to do that. You don't want to do what's right for the American people. You don't want to do what's right for the people who are citizens in Oklahoma. You want to do what people who want to make money off the backs of these people want. You don't want to do the right thing. And it's so absolutely obvious when you listen to Jessica and Cam talk about the fact that they have this governor's council on Hispanic relations, but all they do is get served their own presentations about how great the Hispanic community is. They don't even use these people to help them. They're using the liberal people, the people who are setting up these ways, like the consul for Mexico in Oklahoma.
Yeah, but I do want to throw a caveat in there, because you did specifically mention they're using them for labor and to, to make money off of them. But Jenny, I think, yes, that is 100% true. There's no doubt about it. That's part of capitalism. Capitalism's going to seek out, the bottom line always. But I think the larger issue to this whole deal is what Cam showed in those maps. It's no coincidence that where you have these sanctuary states, sanctuary cities, they're massively blue. Blue is government control, period. That's what it is. You bring these people in, you're going to expand government. You expand government, we're going to lose our rights. We're going to lose our liberties. That's what it's all about, 100%. When it comes down to it, the more you can bring in, the more blue power is going to grow.
So Amber made another comment. She said the governor made a comment at a GOP state committee last year that he didn't want people moving from out of state for places such as California. I guess you can include Oregon in that statement, by the way. Amber is from Oregon, if you didn't know, to bring the liberal woke ideology with them. I find that ironic, since it seems to be that he's looking at doing some of the same things that places like Oregon and California has done. I keep saying Oklahoma was 30 or so years behind Oregon, and it seems like it's picking up speed to be the more like the liberal state. And how many times have we had people on this show from outside of the state, and they say, you're Californicating right now. That's what you're doing. You're Oregonicating right now. You guys are becoming this. I mean, she said a second ago too.
When I agree with Stephanie also, that it is slavery. I mean, this is legalized slavery in one way or another. You're exploiting a lower class of people because they're not educated. They don't have the means. They're just doing whatever they have to do to survive. And we're doing it legally in the United States. It's a travesty.
Well, and again, let's blame the Chamber of Commerce. Let's set this right where this is. You know, I am not a person who is against free enterprise, but what ends up happening is what you said just a second ago. It always becomes about the bottom line, and it's always about money. And so many of our legislators are influenced. We've shown this over and over again, especially when Carmen was coming on regularly. We showed it over and over again about how many private industries are infecting our state with the nonsense. Well, we have to have more insurance. Oh, okay. Well, it's public safety. Explain how it's public safety. Well, I can't. I asked my representative, explain it. And he was the president of the FLP in Oklahoma. Explain how that's public safety. He couldn't really explain. Well, it keeps people safer, but how you're not getting people to buy insurance that need to buy the insurance. So how is that keeping me safe? These people don't think. And the problem is that we're not thinking either. And then contacting our representatives and go, wait, I cry BS on that. That's wrong. And here's the reason why. So a lot of it gets dumped in our lap because we're not doing what we should be doing. So just a second ago, Amber said, Dr. Phil on his platform, Merit Street Media, has a great conversation about what's happening in America and with American citizens and work ethic, and why companies are feeling no other recourse but to hire illegals, along with how part of this has been caused by our education system, trades versus college and all of that. And what Amber said in that one sentence, it's just one sentence, well, two sentences, is the bottom line here.
Yeah.
When the government gives money to people not to work, people don't work.
Yeah. There's no.
It's not shocking.
Why would you? You'll just figure out how to do DoorDash and Netflix on the government dollar, and then you can just hang out and just bread and circus your life. That's what the government wants, because now you're dependent on the government. The government's your mother and father. The government's your provider. It's your sugar daddy. So yeah, you gotta keep those people in there that are gonna not make you be incentivized.
And that's what it is. It's what we've always talked about. And Jessica said, you know, it's like the dog chasing its tail. She said it's a big circle, but that's what it is. So the government steps in and tries to help poverty, which is not the job of government. Ever. It's the job of churches and other nonprofits. So the government steps in and tries to help poverty initially. Then everything becomes about poverty because they realize they can dupe the American people into saying, oh, but it's all about poverty. And people go, oh, yeah. So then they enact more laws to help people who are in poverty. And then after they enact the laws to help the people in poverty, they find out that they're actually incentivizing people to be in poverty. So then they go back and try to correct that by doing something else. And then it just becomes this government boondoggle of the government taking, just chasing its tail, when what they really need to do, stop helping. You protect my liberty. That's your only job. Your only job is to protect my liberty, and that doesn't mean anything else. So it would be so much better if they would just get out and leave it alone. So then she says another thing here. Oklahoma government already thinks Oklahomans are stupid, which I'm pretty sure that's true. They require an 8th grade reading test before getting a driver's license. I forgot about that. And if you don't think that's not a hard thing for homeschoolers to overcome, you would be wrong. Because I had 3 drivers that were homeschool kids that were not in 8th grade to take an 8th grade test. And that was so again, now we have a law
But who is it helping? It's actually hurting people. And then it doesn't even get used properly, because how many illegal aliens who are in the 8th grade here are taking a test to drive? I'm waiting. Any answers?
Yeah.
Okay. Whose fault is it kids raised in Oklahoma don't even have an 8th grade reading level? And that's what you said, Michael. Wouldn't it be more helpful, instead of bringing illegal aliens in and then lying and saying it's about something else, which is what the governor's task force did? I mean, I don't think there's any way around that after listening to Jessica and to Cam. Basically, that was just a big fat lie. And it may have just been political to help, illegals here somehow believe that Republicans had their backs. I don't know what that was for, but all of what he did was basically nonsense. That whole task force, just nonsense. So in all states we've lived in, we've never seen this requirement to obtain a driver's license. Such a good thing. Okay. And she says this one is important, the one about the driver's license. That's exactly right. Because why do we make Oklahoma kids take a test for a driver's license, but we're just going to give them away to people who can't even read in their own language?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
why do I have to pay, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for my kids' driver's education, all the stuff we got to go through, all their training?
So I'm going to post we had a comment on Rumble here that I would like people to see too. Hang on, I'm pulling that up. Okay, so Miss MJ said, I've actually made a comment on News 5 that they're trying to Californicate Oklahoma and turn it blue. A lot of people said, damn right we are.
Yeah, we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how is it? So people who think this, because we got a nice audience, people who think this, please contact your representatives. And because they're going to push this again, they're going to push this again. That's why they had the task force. That's why the governor does that kind of stupid stuff, because they go, well, we had this task force, and the task force came in and they said it was going to be a really great idea to give people driver's license, because they tried that last year, remember, and everybody got up in arms. So I'm warning you, if you don't talk to your representatives right now, we're going to have the same thing next year. So you just bring them right back to this video and say, well, there are 2 Hispanic people who live here who are actually both involved in the community who say something completely different. Oh, and mention the comment. Okay, which one did I miss? Did I miss a comment? Oh, okay. Yes. So they're also thinking about the sister universities that are educating non-citizens and trying to recruit them to stay and find them a path to citizenship so they can hire them for jobs for Americans that American citizens could fill, that Americans maybe want higher pay than those coming from other countries. Any way you look at it, it takes jobs away from American citizens. And that's the bottom line. But again, because of the fact that we've given people money to sit at home and disincentivized work, then this is what you end up getting. I mean, I just don't know how. The only way to solve these problems, I'm positive, is for people to get involved, Oklahoma citizens to get involved and reach out to their legislators and tell them that, look, I watched this. I've heard these people talking. They're not, this isn't right. There's no other way to do this, guys. That's what a democratic republic is us contacting our legislators and saying that we don't want this, because they represent us. They don't represent lobbyists or private corporations or certain individuals. They represent all of us that they were elected to serve.
Yeah. Well, and Jenny, I think you made several really important points there, that it is us, it's the people, but if we don't do it, the government's going to do it how they want to do it. We've already seen that. They've proven that they're going to override us in one way or another, unless we get in there and we hold them accountable in one way or another. I mean, they're going to do it. They're going to pass it at some point unless we stop them.
Well, there's no way around it. Now, what are you talking about, Stephanie? I'm not understanding. She said you can copy and paste the link in the. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Doink. So I had to do that twice on this broadcast. That's not a good sign. So when you reach out to contact your legislator, you can copy and paste links in. So if you want to actually take the link to this broadcast and you want to send it to your legislator, which I suggest you do with a personal note, you can do that in those contact forms. And that's very true. You can also contact them directly, but I've forgotten what the form is. It's first name dot last name at okhouse.gov, isn't it? Isn't that what it is? Gen Z would rather get paid to be gamers and social media influencers because we trained them that way, Amber. I mean, because we just trained them that way. That's what our schools have been doing instead of educating them, as you so well pointed out in your other comment. Let's solve the American educational system and trades in all the high schools in Oklahoma and United States. Even Obama, I don't even want to say that. Well, he wanted it for a different reason, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And Mike Rowe talks about that all the time. You know, he has a company or a private donation, a nonprofit set up for, what is it called? America Works. I think that's what it's called. Yeah. Mike Rowe is amazing, Amber. And he does have, I think it's America Works. Let me see if I can find out what it says. What it's called. No, Mike has a new series, How America Works. I didn't realize that. But he does have I don't know what his nonprofit is. Let me see. Oh, Mike Rowe Works Foundation. That's what it is. So he's got this is his, oops, it's not coming. There it is. Okay. Mike Rowe Works Foundation. This is what it is. It seems like it should be a lot faster to do these things. America is profoundly disconnected. So yeah, if you want to help donate to that, I mean, I think he's doing some great work, and they've got curriculum, and he gives scholarships and that kind of thing. So there is that. But before, you've got something waiting in there, I know. So hold on one second and let me make a quick, let me share my screen here. So remember what Cam was saying about migrant crime and human trafficking and that kind of thing. Migrant crime wave during Biden-Harris administration under scrutiny amid series of assaults and murders. This is MSN. They are reporting it from Fox News, but basically what they say in here is that there has been an absolute immigrant murder convictions, tens of thousands higher than ICE's bombshell figure, data experts says. In March, Haitian illegal immigrant was arrested for a stabbing death of a married couple in Florida. I mean, if you just, then this is another one that's super, super important. Human trafficking has surged under the Biden administration. Why? Why? Because of this, because the unchecked immigration that's coming in across the border in Oklahoma is apparently all in with that under Governor Stitt. Did you want to show something? You have something down here. Are you muted? You muted yourself again.
Yeah, I just unmuted.
Okay. What is this?
I said if Julia's on here, she'll like this.
Are you going to play it?
Just a quote.
Okay, play it. Did you freeze? Are you freezing?
Yeah, it's for some reason it's buffering.
Yeah, I wonder
It's on-
why. While we're waiting on you,
Only
Amber
10
says,
seconds long. I don't know what.
our youth should have the accessibility to training in every county, not just in one or two areas of the state. Not everyone can afford to live from home while getting training. That's exactly right. You what? What happened? Well, it's not working.
It's getting ready to play.
Okay.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yep.
There you go.
That's it. That's it. I'm from the government and I'm here to help, because you don't help, you just make things worse. Amber says, needs to be quality training. We need it to be available to all students. Our Oklahoma students are often having to apply and interview because there's a limited amount of slots for the programs. True in Oklahoma and in Alaska, where 2 of our children interviewed and accepted in programs while in high school. So we've had the same problem out here. And here's the other problem. Even though all of us, whether we want to or not, have to pay property taxes for schools, technical schools, those of us who have homeschool kids, it's very hard to get into the technical school because they'll only take the public school kids first, which is, again, ridiculous because I'm paying taxes for that too. And now I can't use it. My kids can't use it. So, I mean, there are ways to solve all of these problems that we've talked about today, but our government doesn't want to do that. They want to do completely the wrong thing. And again, the only way to stop that is to contact your representatives and tell them that I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Pretty true.
All right. Is there anything else for you today, Michael? Because we've almost got 2 hours again today.
No, just the fact that, like always, we need to take personal responsibility because the government wants crisis. They want overrun. That's how they get their power, is because, we can't handle the immigrants in our own state. We can't handle the money in our own state. We can't handle this disaster in our own state. We've got to bring in the federal government. We can't handle education in our own state. We're so low. We're so bad. We need to do what the government says. We need to do, this and that. So ultimately, it's about us just taking responsibility ourselves and telling the government to get lost.
Yeah, there's no other way to do this if we're going to save any of this. It's got to stop. And I do hope, and I just beg you, and I'll put up a couple of these. I've got a bunch of different things. I may even try to squeeze them into one kind of mashup so that everybody can have that and send out or send to their friends or whatever. But there were so many good things said here today by Jessica and Cam, and those things have got to go. They're on the governor's council, Hispanic council, but don't seem to be able to affect policy. I do think that's, super telling.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mr. Michael, I appreciate you so much. And Amber, great comments. And Stephanie, you too. Thank you so much for chiming in today. Thank you for everybody who watched. We always appreciate you. And please, they were great. I totally agree. Share. It was a great conversation. So, okay, I got lost. I guess have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Pray for rain. I'm getting very nervous when the wind blows out here on the prairie going far, scares me. So, that's very nice. Look at Stephanie. Thank you for being awesome teachers. Well, we're not always, we have to be schooled ourselves sometimes, right, Michael?
Most of the time.
That's why.
What we're doing, pulling the veil back. That's all. We're just pulling the veil back so we can actually see what the heck's trying to see what's going on.
Yeah, we need everybody to be red pilled with their eyes open. And Nancy says, yes, praying for rain. We do have to do that. So, all right, everybody, thank you again for being with us. We so appreciate you, and have a really great weekend this weekend. Let's pray for rain. All right, we'll see you again on Wednesday. Oh, shoot. Who do we have on Wednesday? Oh, we have a really great show on Wednesday. You're going to need to be tuned into this, because remember, Governor Stitt wanted to make sure that we had socialized medicine for our kind of lower economic levels for sooner care. He wanted to socialize sooner care. Well, he did. He fired a couple of people off of the healthcare board in order to get the vote he wanted to socialize and the Medicare, basically sooner care. And it has been an absolute boondoggle with people not getting the services they need. Have you heard about this in the paper?
No bet.
I haven't even heard about it. I've not heard about it in anything. We just don't seem to be talking about this, but we've got several people on, including a legislator who's going to talk to us about this on Wednesday, because this has to stop and it has to get rolled back. We're spending a lot of money and helping nobody. So that's on Wednesday. On Friday, our friend Ian Clinton from Enid is going to come back on to give us an update on the solar installation that they're trying to put in on the plains in Enid. And this is a super, oh, yes, this is, yeah. Yes, Stitt fired Dr. Jean Househire, the lady who ran for SD32, and another lady. That's exactly correct. So you want to be there for Wednesday for sure and tell other people. So Friday, Leanne's going to give us an update on that, because there's just so much going on in the state right now, because our state is red, but we keep going to the blue federal government to asking them for money for green initiatives. And because our governor is happy to have green initiatives here in the state, we're losing tons of farmland. Again, bottom line money. You'll want to tune in next Friday. We'll be so happy to see you then. We're really having some great podcasts. I do appreciate the numbers that are of people who are tuning in. And like you've said before, Michael, nobody else is talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
So bring your friends, and we'll see you again next Wednesday. Have a great weekend. Thanks for being with us.